Yep.
Woo! Made it.
Dude,
Nice.
every time it's something, I swear to God.
Yes,
So
you're familiar with this. We're here right
I
now
am.
with Mr. Nicholas Terzo. Nick, where are you checking in from in the world?
A secret location. So
Secret location it is. All
it's
right.
Nashville, Tennessee this week.
Nashville. Okay. It's a town I've never been to, but we're here in sunny, beautiful Buffalo, New York. You ever been to Buffalo before, Nick?
I was born and raised in upstate New York.
No kidding.
Yes. And my dad used to take me by my neck and take me to Buffalo Bills games when it was 25 degrees and snowing. And
Oh, jeez.
so, yeah, so I'm an upstate New York kid. So I know Buffalo well enough.
Completely missed that. Well, go Bills. We got Bills Mafia here then again, and I asked no one. I think that's 3 weeks straight we have Bills fans. But I just want to say cheers, man. This is a honor to have you on. Really, really appreciate it. And I like to just cheers at the top of the episode. So all the best, man. Woo!
I'll give you cheers with my water. So
Got a future sponsor here. So right on, man. Like
keep
this.
working it.
Yeah. we well, I like to start off these episodes with a quote of the day. And today's quote is from a fella named Tommy Dewar. This is the Dewar's whiskey. Minds are like parachutes; they function better when open. And I think you've definitely made a career out of having an open mind times 10. Again, we're here with Nicholas Terzo. This is Alice in April. I'm calling this month of episodes Alice in April. I like to blow up a little bit of the Alice in Chains. Love them. They're my number 2 to Metallica. But you're kicking it off. This is I Asked No One, episode 50. But Nick is a former A&R executive, entertainment business rep for the Walt Disney Company, Sony Music Entertainment, and Warner Music Group. And you're also the host of your own podcast that you started last year, just like I did, the Radical Pod. So tell us about the Radical Pod and maybe why you decided to start your own podcast, please.
Sure, why not? It's a scrum. I might as well get into it too last year. But really, what it came down to was 30 years of having been around some of the top creative minds in the world, basically. Anyone from a Rob Halford to Madonna. Being in those rooms, um, I think you learn a lot. And having been at Columbia Records at the time I got taught how to make records from, guys that had worked with, everyone from Bob Dylan to Miles Davis. So those are the guys that taught me how to work in a studio, how to make records. We used to call it that back in those ancient days.
Right.
So really where I got to is a point in my life, and I think the pandemic really isolated us and allowed me to focus that, I really thought those conversations were important to have. A lot of us are getting up into our third chapters. We're not young men like you. So I wanted to have those conversations.
That's awesome, man. And I've listened to some of your episodes, and some of them are available by video as well. I'll include a link below to the Radical Pod. He's got a bunch of cool merch and everything, which is great.
Yeah, I kind of pulled the visual stuff out because I just thought until we can present it in like a better way. So, most of the visual is off of YouTube now. It's just audio. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Well done. I'm definitely entertained. I'm we're getting educated, kind of like how my dad educates and entertains. My dad has a wine television show here in Buffalo, Spiel the Wine, and he'll be watching this
oh,
when.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. So he's Spiel the Wine. I'm kind of Spiel the rock and roll, if you will. But yeah, you've mentioned some of those names. You've had some pretty cool guests: Ann Wilson of Hearts, Jason Mraz, Derek Green of Sepultura, Richard Fortus of Guns N' Roses, Randy Jackson, and you mentioned the guy himself, the metal god, Rob Halford. How I love the chat, by the way. I think he had his book Confess. I have a signed copy right in the other room. You read that in one sitting?
I did. It got there kind of late, and I knew I had to do the interview, and so I needed to jam it out in one Sunday. I read the book. So
Good for you, man. Well, I'm gonna think. Maybe I'm not gonna get it done in one day, but I'm gonna get it done real soon. It's way overdue.
Savor it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly. I'm sure he had some really crazy ass stories. I'm looking forward to read more about Rob Halford. He's the singer of Judas Priest. I was just listening to Hell Bent for Leather in between showings this morning in real estate. It came on Ozzy's Boneyard, and I was thinking to myself, why aren't they in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet? You know, you could put Deep Purple in there and Sabbath, but I think Priest time's coming up soon. Don't you agree?
yeah, I hope so. I mean, because if you go back and listen to it, you know, you realize, wait a minute, they had like top 40 hits. I mean, this wasn't some fringe metal band in any way. So, I mean, they did have radio hits. So it seems odd that they wouldn't be fully in the hall.
Yep, yep. You've got another thing coming, living after midnight, and the works. But what stood out to you most about Confess, which was Rob Halford's autobiography? I'm looking forward to reading it myself, as you could tell.
Yeah, look, I met those guys kind of around the trial up in Reno when I was at Columbia Records and kind of became, you know, responsible for their A&R activities here in the United States. You know, and Rob was kind of trying to go down a path as a solo artist. So I met Rob at that time and spent, you know, around 3 years around him trying to figure out what he wanted to do creatively. And the thing that hurt me was I never knew kind of the pain he was in. I never knew he had contemplated suicide. I never knew at the time kind of we were working together professionally. I didn't know he had been arrested for soliciting sex
Mm,
publicly.
wow,
So there were these things I didn't, and he's the perfect English gentleman, the most generous human being on earth. I mean, you know, you see him on stage with that power, and then off stage, he's just a lovely English gentleman. And so learning that in the book, I just didn't realize what he had been under pressure wise personally. And so it kind of hurt me a little bit that I wasn't more self aware of his struggles.
gotcha. Yeah, the almighty Rob Halford. They had a book that actually just came out. I'm gonna grab it real quick. I got it right here. There we go. So 50 years of Judas Priest. It's funny because in our room we have our drawer, our clothes drawer is the exact leather that it has here. So it matches, you know, in the bedroom. But incredible book. Definitely recommend it. I'll include it in the link below if you don't have it. I literally spent 4 to 5 hours just paging through photos, and these are just
That's
amazing photos.
beautiful. That's a
Yeah, it's
beautiful
numbered and
box.
everything. Really, really awesome.
So
So
you see a lot of instruments. Are you a musician? Are you in a band?
I jammed with some people in San Diego. I lived in San Diego for 2 years, and then another 2 years in LA. Worked at the Hotel Bel-Air, Wolfgang Puck.
Oh, you did?
I did. You ever been there before?
Oh, of course I have.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Oh, geez, that's awesome. Maybe we crossed paths in there. I was a host there at the front of the restaurant, and yeah, you are looking a little familiar.
I don't think I've been there in like probably 10 years. So
Okay,
it's been a while.
well that rules that out. But yeah, I'm a drummer. A lot of Metallica, a lot of Nirvana, Alice in Chains. That guitar is signed by Static X. Had it signed in London, Ontario. I have a twin brother. He just went back to Athens, Greece, and we're the twins up front in all these shows. So, you know, my podcast, I started off, it was like, okay, I've acquired all these souvenirs and stories from traveling the world for concerts. And it's really, I'm in real estate, but I think my life's work and the blood and the sweat and everything is just being a fan and going out there through my 20s. I'm 33 now, and
You're
um,
33.
I'm 33. Yeah.
Well, you defy that. You don't look anywhere near 33. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So this has been a nice little release for me, you know, just to kind of chit chat rock and roll. But like I said, Alice in Chains, this is a limited edition live facelift record. This came out in 2016. As you can tell, I haven't opened it yet, but it's love these guys. And you just happen to, uh, and again, I'm honored to even have you here and chat a little bit about this, but you signed Alice in Chains. And over all these years of me just being into hard rock and heavy metal, everyone's talking about Alice in Chains being the first band to break. Not many people, Alice in Chains got signed before Nirvana, before Pearl Jam, before Soundgarden, and that was you. So if you could just tell us a little bit about how that process went, man, and what you
Yeah,
think of it? Yeah.
I met them. I was friendly with the guys in Queensryche, um, DeGarmo and Michael Wilton, and so I'd go up to Seattle on occasion to hang out with them. Um, and I kind of found this Soundgarden EP, is it Louder Than Love, the first one that Sub
Yeah,
Pop had released, and
yeah,
I
their
was like,
first
oh my
major
god,
label, or their
what?
first, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that just blew my mind. So I then was hired by Performing Rights Society called ASCAP, American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers.
Mm.
And the job was to go out and find new up and coming songwriters. Really, they represent writers. So my first trip was to Seattle because I had known that the community was robust. And on that first trip, I met everyone from the Mother Love Bone guys that became Pearl Jam, Chris Cornell, um, those guys, and I'd met the Alice guys. And the Alice guys kind of more of a fluke. I was going to there was a big rehearsal studio called the Music Bank, which was strange. I mean, it was 40 or 50 rooms full of bands, and it was just, for me, kind of bizarre coming from Los Angeles to that. I didn't expect that in Seattle. And I was there to see a band that Atlantic Records were going to sign. It was a speed metal band, and I don't remember their name offhand. But while there, someone in the Alice camp said, look, you got to come down the hallway and see this band while you're here. And it was, 11 o'clock at night. You're exhausted. It's like, really? I got to go see another artist perform. So I went down the hall. The room was so small that Layne had to sing outside in the hallway. There was no way he could sing in that room. It was so tiny, the rehearsal room. And I heard those songs and I thought, wow, there's something here. I'm glad I did this at 11 o'clock at night. So, and I then went back to Los Angeles and kept in touch with them. They did some demos, as did Mother Love Bone, that I helped shop when I was at ASCAP and helped those bands start getting their first record deals. I think Soundgarden already had theirs just barely. So that was my relationship at the early beginnings of the band. And fortunately, that year I was at ASCAP, nobody signed Alice in Chains. So I was able, when I first got hired at Columbia Records, to sign them.
That's beautiful. And that was what, 88, 89?
Yeah, I signed them in 89.
89. I was 1 year old. And
yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that.
well,
I was really young when I signed them too. So don't get,
yeah.
I was still in my early 20s. So.
Okay. A&R, maybe my viewers don't know what A&R stands for, artist and repertoire. You were, and educate me too. Are you just, hey, let's go check out a studio. Let's go check out this band's playing. Maybe we could break them. Was it as simple as that? Like, oh, I'm going to champion this band. I'm going to tell the big wigs at Columbia, let's fucking do it. 3-record, deal. And that's it.
Not that simple. So, you got to think back then that there's 4 major label groups today, right?
Yep.
Back then, there was probably like 20 or 25 labels because they hadn't consolidated yet.
Right.
So one, you had that competition going on. There were, at the time, I think 400 or 500 A&R people. That's kind of unheard of now.
Right.
So there was a ton of competition. It took so much skill to, even convince a band to do it, especially when you're at a major label, something the size of Columbia Records that never put out music like that. Columbia Records had so much pop music, and, for a band that was kind of more on the edge, nobody saw Columbia really as a home for them. It wasn't cutting edge enough. So as an A&R guy, yes, your week is definitely listening to a lot of submissions. People would submit music. Nothing unsolicited. It only could come through your network. So it was a very closed cycle in a way. That's why streaming has opened that pipeline up completely.
Mm.
And then you would go and see bands every night, 2 or 3 bands a night in LA, easy in LA, because there were enough clubs back then. And then you'd go on the road, you'd find something, you'd find a community that something was popping. And I always used to say back then, we would find you before you found us.
Mm.
And we'd have a scouting program where in a lot of the smaller cities, we actually had scouts in those cities that would do reports every week. So it was a very large canvassing operation, but finding and discovering the artist was only kind of the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
The hardest part was getting the material right. We were involved in all those decisions with the band, choosing the right producers, picking the right singles.
Right.
And our guys back then sequenced those records. That was our sequences on how those songs ran on those records.
Did you pick Man in the Box to be the lead single, or?
It was a second kind of single. We went to Metal Radio with We Die Young. And then I insisted if they were going anywhere beyond metal, that Man in the Box was it. And I know Jerry has his own version of it. If you watch his interview with Gibson, they did, which was beautiful.
Great interview. Yeah.
It was so well done, and he was fantastic in it. But, he has his own version of it, which regarding me, and it's not true. I mean, I really basically almost quit my job if they weren't going to release that as the next single for the band. So that's how much I believed in Man in the Box. So you're involved with all that, and then you've got this record company back then that had distribution. You had thousands of employees back then. Distribution wasn't, it was all physical.
Yep.
Then you had to figure out how to work your own company to make that project a priority within the company. So you did it well. It was a really, really hard job. You couldn't just live in the studio as you wanted to, because most A&R guys are very creative. You had to know how to work the building and how to work radio promotion and marketing and even the sales guys that put the records in stores. I mean, you really had to have those relationships, and it was a lot of work.
I applied, as a complete no one. I didn't have any connections to Capitol Records, an A&R role that opened up like in 2014 or 2015. Oh, what if? And it was a complete pipe dream. Got the email, didn't get it, whatever, so be it. But it sounds like, yeah, you have your hands full on a job like that. And did you have Alice come into a meeting room and you sign off on papers? No, I mean, how did they find out about it? Did you see them early on, like kind of guiding them through this process, like weekly meetings or something?
You mean the creative process, or the actually signing them and getting the record deal?
Yeah, signing them and opening up the tours, because I know Clash of Titans came along and all these opportunities.
Yeah. Look, I was a young guy, I was in my early 20s, so I couldn't, they signed me competitively. Columbia did, because when I was at ASCAP, I was finding stuff that the other labels, weren't on top of, and I was. So there was, kind of a competitiveness in Columbia having me come aboard as an A&R guy. So to be honest, my first signing was Toad the Wet Sprocket, because it was a competitive situation, and I had shopped that when I was at Columbia, when I was at ASCAP. So they came in simultaneously to me being hired. So they were actually my first signing. And went on to do, have a very successful commercial career.
Yeah. And you had
Alice,
your show too, the lead singer.
Yeah, Glenn's been on the show. Yep. We had a very intense conversation, as Glenn can be. That's why we love him. But since they were in Seattle, we were in LA. What I needed to do is I took a guy named Ron Oberman, who was the vice president of A&R on the West Coast. There was a movie just done about him and David Bowie that Mark Maron just starred in.
Really?
Yeah. So Ron and I went up. I think the band was playing in Olympia, Washington, or like in Spokane on some events. Yeah, it was out there. So we went there. He saw him. He signed off too. And so we just made the deal. It's a few months of negotiating back and forth, but that's usually just the lawyers. It's the business affairs department at Sony, and it's the lawyers that represent Alice. And, you have to be involved as an A&R guy in those decisions and those terms too, in pushing the business affairs people at your label to allow certain things when you really want an artist signed.
Sure. Well, it's the 31st anniversary of Facelift. I have to ask you about the early days there. My all-time Alice records got to be Dirt. They were with Columbia on Dirt. Did you have any part in the order of those
Mm.
tracks? You,
Yes.
you
Yeah, yeah,
did.
yeah. Yeah, I work with the band all the way all the studio albums that were done with Layne. I was there the whole run.
Oh, okay.
So, um, yeah, so I was involved in all those decisions. Dave Jordan was certainly, my choice. Hopefully, they would have chosen him as a producer. You have to present more options than just one guy. But I was so impressed with the Jane's Addiction records that he made,
Yes.
that I just couldn't think of another guy to do those records. Um, so I was very happy to have Dave kind of there. And sonically, those records stand out to this day. When you've done well, when you have like Lars calling saying, "Hey, how'd you get the drums on Dirt?" You know what I mean? So the things we did sonically were really important. So
Absolutely timeless, very colorful, so much to offer their catalog, especially in the 90s. Um, Wood was on the singles soundtrack. Wood is Corey Taylor quoted that as his all-time favorite song of Slipknot. So Wood, was that your decision to make that the album closer? Was it your decision for Them Bones up top or Junkhead in the middle?
I think Wood just took on a life of its own, right? And we finally had success at alternative radio with Wood. They had never played a Seattle band. I don't think they played Soundgarden at that point.
Right.
So that was the first song, and you mentioned that earlier because people get there's a lot of revisionist history here, that Nirvana kind of broke down all the doors and windows,
Yes.
and I love them. Believe me, I tried to sign them. So I have huge respect for them, but it really was Wood. Wood broke down the alternative radio format for Seattle. And
Instead of Smells Like Teen Spirit, it was Wood. Okay.
yeah, so Wood really broke the format. They had not played any of this Seattle grunge music, in quotes, as people were calling it. And that broke it down. So I think the success of Wood while we were trying to record Dirt, I think the label, in a way, the president of the label maybe forced that we put that on at the end of Dirt.
Ah, okay. Wow. The third record was the self-titled record, and the final one with Layne. It was it tough to get Layne back? I know he was struggling with his addictions, and were you in touch with him personally at this time?
You know what? He fell off. It was a really tough period for the band. It was very hard to get everyone in the room and kind of aligned on making that record. And I was in New York at the time. They were in Seattle. I didn't have kind of as much input at that point. One, you're dealing with a band that had two successful records. Throw Jar of Flies in, and you had a number one there.
Love that
So
record.
it was very difficult to kind of manage that third studio album for me personally. So my input into that record was kind of minimal at that point.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Any funny memories of Layne that stick out over the years? God rest his soul.
Dude, the kid was the funniest person I'd ever met. And you wouldn't have thought it. You thought he was kind of down and dark. And that kid was so hilarious, that I miss his humor so much. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Whether it's something he wrote to me on, some album artwork, or he's a funny kid. It's a big loss. He was so talented. And,
Right.
I think their influence today, had that remained, just would have been unstoppable. You know what I mean? I think everyone sees Pearl Jam as the top of that whole pack, but
Right.
I think it would have been different had Layne.
Yeah, another amazing band, Pearl Jam. I've seen post Layne Alice in Chains over 10 times, all around North America. Um, they played. I was in my cap and gown. I graduated from a school called Flagler College in St. Augustine, Florida, and there's me and my brother, cap and gown, with our buddy Christian in the middle, and Sean comes up, puts a cigarette in his mouth, and we had a flag, and he put the flag on, and Jerry danced in the flag, and that was a really, really fun moment. What could I say? They've really created amazing next chapter in the length of this band with Black is Way to Blue, Devil Put Dinosaurs Here, and of course with Rainier Fog.
Jerry's not to be messed with as a writer.
No, he's
So
not.
don't
hell,
discount that boy. So
hell no, man. Hell no. Geez. But have you met Kurt Cobain? Have you met Chris Cornell over the
I
years?
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I met Chris on my first trip. I mean, we stayed very close to them at the time. You know, I think being that they were in Seattle, they didn't have as much access to like the Los Angeles people. So I think in a lot of ways they needed guidance with a lot of their decisions, you know, especially around music publishing. And with us being at ASCAP, we were able to provide that guidance to a lot of those bands. And it was such a community up there. I mean, everyone was tied together.
Right.
Um, and
Right.
yeah, with Nirvana, yes, I met Kurt and Chris and Grohl, and you know, I tried to sign them. It was a really tough thing for me. It was very something I definitely had my heart and soul into, and couldn't sign them. You
Couldn't
know,
beat David Geffen, huh?
they were hell bent on being where Sonic Youth was, and I couldn't beat that. We didn't have Sonic Youth. You know, we were Columbia Records, and they had Sonic Youth, and you know, Geffen did pass on them
Mm.
a couple of times and they stayed kind of insistent because of the Sonic Youth thing. But yes, I spent time with them. You know, had them come to New York, walked them through the building there, walked them through the building in L.A.
Kurt was a quiet person,
Quiet,
I gather.
quiet. Still had a good sense of humor, but you know, was definitely quiet. You know,
Was
Chris
Grohl
was.
quiet back then, or was he?
Uh, Grohl wasn't necessarily quiet. No, no. I mean, he came in. It was interesting because when I met them, they had another drummer. I forget who the original guy
Chad
was.
Channing,
Yeah, I think.
and
And
before?
then Grohl came in at the end. Like by the time I got them to New York to meet with the heads of Columbia and New York City, Grohl was on that trip.
Okay.
So Grohl came in right kind of at the end.
They weren't in suits and shirts and ties going to meet with the execs. No, it was just t-shirt,
No,
jeans, whatever.
no. And the funny part was, you know, a couple of things that, you know, they set people up, you know what I mean? And that was kind of their thing. So at Columbia, their big setup was giving them the impression they wanted to be a stadium band.
Ah,
Um, and they didn't want to be. And so you know, there's people at Columbia that kind of took the bait.
okay.
So they kind of baited people with stuff like, you know, they had a very independent spirit about them. Um, and, you know, it is what it is. It turned out maybe bigger than they had ever anticipated. And I'm not sure they could deal with that.
Mhm.
Certainly Kurt.
Right, right. God bless him, Layne, Chris, the fallen heroes of the Seattle scene. Previous guest on my show was Kevin Martin of Candlebox.
Yep, I know Kevin.
He particularly mentioned the marijuana stench that came from Music Bank, uh, just over the years, and thought that was great. But this is awesome, man. This is April's the month. This is Alice in April. We are celebrating 31 years of their debut record, Facelift. I've got some guests coming on this month, which includes next week is Hubba Hubba. He tattooed Jerry Cantrell's little shoulder piece there. He's still tattooing people at the Seattle Tattoo Emporium. If you ever wanted to go check that out, that's next week. Week after that, Paul Rackman, music video director of Man in the Box. He's done Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, and a few others, man.
Very
So
talented, Paul.
okay, yeah, I'll tell him you said hello.
Please, it's been forever. Please do.
Yeah, but my goal for week 4 is either Sean or Jerry, man, and I'm trying to get the powers that be to make this happen. But hey, we'll see what happens there.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. But, hey, happy Easter. I hope you have a lovely holiday with your family, and thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good luck with the podcast.
Thank you. Right back at you. I'll be tuning into yours, the Radical Pod, and again, that's going to be a link below. And stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry, and stay heavy. We'll see you, man.
All right, Kevin. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.